She wore a crown of iron, yet no crown could shelter her from betrayal, heartbreak, or death. In a world ruled by blood and steel, the Viking Queen's greatest battles were fought within. Dawn breaks softly over the mist-clad fjord, a lone longship cutting silently through glassy waters. The cold light reveals a queen poised not only to rule, but to endure, crown both shield and shackle resting heavy upon her brow. Her cloak of bear fur brushes the cold stone floor as she ascends the throne, each step measured against unseen dangers. Her hand tightens around a sword stained with blood, the jewels on her fingers catching flickering torchlight like tears. In the draughty great hall, her breath rasps softly, mingling with distant war horns that echo through shadowed corridors. Beyond the walls, armies prepare for battle, but inside, the fiercest struggle unfolds in whispered plots and veiled glances. Tonight, we enter her gilded Cager realm, where power promises peril, and every ally may wield a knife sharper than steel. Flickering torches cast shifting shadows across cold stone walls, their flames breathing life into the dark fortress. Queen Sigrid kneels before an altar adorned with raven feathers, silent in her prayer, each plume a symbol of death and prophecy. The weight of coming turmoil presses upon her as a messenger pounds urgently on the heavy door, breath ragged from haste. He thrusts inside a letter, its crimson wax seal cracked and smeared with blood. The scrawled runescript bears her brother's name, a frantic call from the heart of chaos. As distant screams and clashing steel echo through the courtyard, Sigrid's resolve hardens. Lady-in-waiting Ingrid steps forward, pressing a dagger into her trembling hand. "Your throne demands blood," she whispers. Eyes burning with fierce determination, Sigrid rises, her steel-clad footsteps resonating through the hall. Mercy and massacre hang in balance. The queen moves forward, her fate entwined with the kingdom's survival. The hall falls silent but for the steady echo of her footfall. In the heart of a city that never sleeps, a female CEO paces alone in a glass-walled boardroom. The clock reads 3 a.m., and the glow of distant skyscrapers flickers against the night. Despite the power her position commands, solitude tightens its grip, a relentless companion to authority. Far from the public eye, the demands of leadership amplify loneliness, a stark contrast to the influence she wields by day. Meanwhile, across continents, a modern monarch swipes through security footage on a smartphone, overseeing guard rotations with precise attention. From ancient castles to sleek command centers, rulers remain vigilant, protected by layers of technology and human watchfulness. Yet, statistics reveal a paradox. 72% of executives report chronic loneliness, while 55% of heads of state live under constant security threats. Authority may promise control, but it often delivers isolation. The higher one rises, the fewer truly walk beside them. Behind closed doors, power binds its holders with invisible chains, long hours, ceaseless vigilance, and the crushing weight of expectation. Even in opulent galas filled with admirers, loneliness persists, thriving amid forced smiles and empty conversations. Trust becomes a rare currency, guarded by Secret Service agents scanning crowds and monarchs reviewing intelligence with suspicion. Public triumphs conceal sleepless nights and mounting anxiety, the hidden costs of leadership. We envy the shine of power, yet seldom glimpse its shadows, its satires, its solitude, its threats, its sacrifices. As the cityscape fades into a vast starry sky, we are invited to peer beyond the throne into the quiet chambers where rulers grapple with the true burden of command. A queen's crown lies heavy upon a blood-stained altar cloth, its iron cold and unyielding. Viking queens ruled not just lands, but a complex maze of kin strife, ritual obligations, and relentless political maneuvering. Their honor demanded sacrifice, and their solitude could be as lethal as any sword. Power for these women was forged in shadow, a constant balancing act between fierce loyalty and the imperative to survive. Ancient runestones and saga illustrations reveal queens as both peacemakers and poisoners, wielding justice and vengeance in equal measure. Their rights encompassed land ownership and command over followers, yet they remained vulnerable to family feuds and the shifting tides of conquest. Marriage was more than ceremony, it was diplomacy carved in stone. Through rites, counsel, and sometimes brutal sacrifices, queens forged alliances or sparked conspiracies. Each feast and vow a calculated move in a deadly game. Forensic archaeology uncovers graves where queens rest beneath crushing stones or blade wounds, silent witnesses to the lethal costs of royal power. These burials tell stories of struggle and survival seldom spoken in the sagas. In stone chapels, flickering candles illuminate ritual objects and weapons, symbolizing queens' roles as sacred guardians entwined with blood-soaked vendettas. Their power was a sacred burden, heavy with deadly consequence. Historians and archaeologists confirm that these women were far more than saga figures. They navigated a brutal, divine world where the crown's gleam masked a violent reality. Steel yourself for a journey where every jewel hid a dagger, and the greatest threat to her power was her own crown. The queen's iron circlet glints ominously in flickering firelight. Before darkness swallows the scene, under the pale light of the moon, a burial mound slowly parts to reveal a trove of ancient treasure stalks gleam, weapons rest beside weathered bones. The skeleton of a woman, once a queen, lies encased in earth and mystery. This silent grave speaks beyond death, telling a story of power gained and peril endured. It is a resting place heavy with history, where life's struggles and sacrifices are etched in bone and artifact, offering a profound glimpse into the hidden costs of Viking queenship. Ancient law manuscripts lie open, the faded runic script painstakingly copied by scribes in candlelit chambers. The Groggers and Gulathing laws carved out specific rights for Viking queens: the ability to own property, preside at local assemblies known as things, and wield a legal voice within their communities. Yet these rights came with inherent vulnerabilities. Despite their elevated status, queens were subject to outlawry and exile, their protection tied to the shifting fortunes of kin and clan. Their legal standing balanced power with exposure, granting influence but leaving them perilously vulnerable to political tides and familial vendettas. Illustrations from medieval manuscripts depict queens like Tsa and Gunhild, figures both feared and revered. These women emerge from saga and story as warriors wielding war magic, wise counselors shaping alliances, and shrewd political strategists steering battles. Their roles extended beyond domesticity into the heart of Viking power struggles. Through cunning and influence, they negotiated peace, incited conflict, and maintained authority in a male-dominated world. These sagas preserve their memory not only as rulers but as essential architects of Norse political life, blending myth and reality in equal measure. At excavation sites, archaeologists uncover female skeletons marked by healed fractures, signs of ritual duels or violent conflict endured during life. Grave goods, ornate talks, gaming boards, and weapons lay beside them, symbols of status and isolation. These burial sites reveal that queens lived within webs of privilege and peril, where power was inseparable from danger. The presence of healed injuries suggests that authority was not given but fought for, with the female body itself a battleground where social status was both asserted and challenged. Reenactments show sacred marriage rites between queens and chieftain ceremonies, binding political alliances and sanctifying authority. Animal sacrifices, known as, were conducted in her name to ensure fertility and protection, intertwining her power with the land and its people. These rituals were both spiritual and political acts, reinforcing the queen's role as mediator between earthly rule and divine favor. Her marriage was a pact, sealed not only by vows but by sacred duties, anchoring social order through both ceremony and sacrifice. Forensic analyses of bone fragments revealed traces of poison and cut marks consistent with violence. High-status, female burials sometimes show signs of brutal death, possibly linked to political assassinations or blood eagle revenge rituals. Power struggles were deadly affairs. Queens faced threats from usurpers and kin alike. These wounds bear testament to a violent reality behind royal succession, where death was a tool to resolve disputes and consolidate rule. The stakes of power extended beyond the throne into the grave, marking queens as both rulers and victims. Close-up shots revealed torques and ceremonial swords, finely crafted yet heavy with meaning. These objects signified the queen's authority and status, but also her isolation. The placement of rich grave goods within secluded burial chambers reflects a solitary power confined by privilege and guarded by ritual. Such artifacts communicate the duality of queenship, a public role steeped in ceremony, yet often accompanied by profound solitude and separation from the broader community. Law texts, juxtaposed with scenes of women speaking at medieval assemblies, illustrate a complex reality. Queens held legal privileges, including property rights and participation in governance. However, their gender rendered them vulnerable to exile and outlawry punishments often wielded as political weapons against women in power. This tension reveals a legal system that simultaneously elevated and exposed queens, reflecting broader societal ambivalence about female authority and agency. Longships carry brides to distant shores. Wedding feasts unfold with guarded exchanges and wary glances. Marriage functioned as a strategic alliance, cementing peace between clans or kingdoms. Yet for queens, marriage could also mean captivity. Alliances, forged in political necessity, often came at the cost of personal freedom. Navigating this dual role, queens balanced diplomacy with constraint, their lives shaped as much by alliance as by the limitations imposed upon them. Burial mounds, stone cairns, and cremation sites, adorned with artifacts, stand as monuments to a queen's status and contested memory. The manner of burial conveyed political messages. Rich goods and monumental tombs proclaimed power, while choices of location reinforced territorial claims. These funerary practices served as lasting statements of legacy, ensuring that even in death, a queen's authority and influence endured in the landscape and the collective memory. Laboratory X-rays reveal bone damage and forensic clues. Scholars debate the historicity of the infamous blood eagle ritual. Evidence is ambiguous, with some cut marks potentially caused by natural decay or post-mortem processes. This ongoing debate highlights the difficulty of separating Norse myth from archaeological fact. The blood eagle remains a potent symbol, whether historical or legendary, of the brutal intersection between ritual and revenge in Viking culture. A slow pan moves from the ornate hilt of a queen's sword to a broken iron crown half buried in peat moss. Her power was forged in life and sealed in death, her story carved deep into Viking soil. These symbols remind us that queenship was both throne and tomb, a relentless struggle for authority, marked by sacrifice, violence, and enduring legacy. Soft light filters through narrow windows, casting pale rays across cold stone walls. In her solitary chamber, Queen Sigrid rises, wrapped in a heavy, bare fur cloak. She tightens her leather bracelets, each strap a silent reminder of her duty and the burdens she bears. The chill of the stone floor presses beneath her feet as faint sounds of servants stirring echo down the corridors. Despite her power, loneliness clings to her, a queen without comfort, bound by crown and responsibility. Her eyes reflect steely resolve, preparing for the long day ahead in a world ruled by loyalty, betrayal, and survival. In the great hall, Sigrid commands attention as Jarle's warriors and advisors gather. Messengers arrive with urgent news. Disputes over tribute from border clans, rumors of hostile fleets stirring to the south. The queen listens, weighing each word carefully before issuing swift, unyielding decisions. Around her, council members react, some with fear, others with reverence, a few with subtle challenge glinting in their eyes. The atmosphere is tense, a delicate balance of authority and negotiation. Her hand gestures decisively over maps and parchments. Power is wielded not just by sword, but through strategy and command. A trembling thrall is brought before the queen, caught stealing grain from the village storehouse. The room hushes as Sigrid considers the offense. Her mercy spares the lowly servant, recognizing the desperate hunger beneath the act, yet she condemns the thrall's master to outlaw, stripped of law's protection, and cast into exile. The villagers exchange whispers, hope for the weak, fear of the consequences. This judgment reveals the complex weave of justice and power, where mercy is calculated and authority carefully maintained through both punishment and pardon. At the temple, thick smoke curls from burning offerings as priests chant solemn prayers. Sigrid stands poised, presenting a bull as sacrifice to the gods for peace and prosperity. Blood spills on the altar's stone, runes inscribed in ash by trembling hands. In silence, the queen sharpens her blade, the metallic scrape echoing through the sacred space, a symbol of her readiness for war despite the prayers for peace. This ceremony binds spiritual favor to temporal power, legitimizing her rule through divine sanction and signaling the ever-present possibility of conflict beneath solemn ritual. Nobles gather around heavy wooden tables, mead flowing freely in carved horns. Soft voices exchange whispered promises, veiled threats hidden beneath smiles. Sigrid negotiates marriage alliances, forging bonds that could strengthen her reign or sow future discord. Laughter bubbles amidst the tension. Every raised cup masks calculated ambition. The intoxicating blend of diplomacy and duplicity fills the air. As alliances are sealed and rivalries concealed beneath the warmth of fermented honey and careful words, under the open sky, the queen presides over the Thing Court, where justice is both law and spectacle. Sentences are pronounced loudly, ear-cropping for oath-breakers, outlawry for traitors. The crowd reacts with a mix of awe, dread, and acceptance. The public nature of punishment reinforces social order, making law visible and fear palpable. Sigrid's presence commands respect. Her rulings both feared and revered. Justice here is a performance, a necessary theater to maintain cohesion in a society balanced precariously between loyalty and chaos. In shadowed corners of the great hall, eyes meet in silent calculation. Coded words pass between trusted allies and suspected foes alike. Sigrid watches carefully, noting shifting loyalties and hidden agendas. Court intrigue is a constant undercurrent. Alliances form and fracture with a glance or a whispered secret. Psychological warfare becomes a tool as vital as any blade power maintained. not only through force, but through understanding and manipulating trust and suspicion alike. Long tables groan under lamb stew, barley bread, and salted fish. The mingling aromas fill the great hall, but beneath the conviviality lies tension. Guests are acutely aware that alliances are fragile and that a misplaced word could ignite conflict. Sigrid sits apart, back to the wall, eyes scanning, the room observing, calculating. The feast is a stage for subtle negotiations, unspoken challenges, and fragile truces, as much as for nourishment. On the elevated dais, Sigrid sits alone, the physical height mirroring emotional isolation. Her back to the wall is a symbol of constant vigilance, guarding against threats unseen and heard only in whispers. Power is paradoxical, visible yet isolating. The queen bears the loneliness of rule, where every decision is heavy, every trust tentative. The crown's weight is felt not only on her brow, but in the quiet moments of solitude that define her reign. In the dim light of the chamber, Ingrid presses a folded letter into the queen's hand. It details a conspiracy within the court walls. Loyalty and danger intertwine in Ingrid's conflicted expressions. Serving the queen means risking all. Sigrid's face remains calm but sharp, absorbing the threat with measured resolve. The intimate trust between queen and handmaiden is a fragile thread in a tapestry woven with secrets and deception. Under cloak of night, conspirators gather in whispered tones, plotting the queen's downfall. Flickering torches cast long shadows, guarded glances scanning for spies. Sigrid's network of informants moves unseen. Protective rituals and charms shield her from both visible and invisible dangers. In this realm, where trust is scarce and stakes are life and death, the queen's survival depends on vigilance and cunning. Sigrid invokes ancient protective magic. Smoke rising from ritual implements. Silent guards patrol the corridors, a physical barrier to threats. Spiritual belief and practical security intertwine, reinforcing her control over the realm's dangers. The queen's power is exercised through both visible force and unseen protections. A complex defense woven from faith, fear, and authority. In quiet solitude, Sigrid traces the delicate petals of a pressed rose, the last gift from a son claimed by plague. The fragile beauty amidst candlelight embodies loss and love. This private grief, hidden from court eyes, steels her resolve. Personal tragedy becomes the silent strength behind her relentless rule, a reminder of the human heart beneath the crown. Jarl Eirik enters the hall, cloaked in mud and scars, his weariness evident. His relationship with Sigrid is complex, part partnership, part tension. Despite battle's toll, their reliance on each other endures. Moments of quiet exchange reveal vulnerability beneath their public facades, underscoring the personal costs of power amid perpetual conflict. Ingrid grapples with divided loyalties, caught between serving the queen and the whispers of conspiracy. Her conflicted expressions and furtive glances reveal the moral and emotional weight of her position. Betrayal and trust weave a dangerous path, where a single misstep could mean ruin for all involved. Svein, the court scold, records the queen's deeds and court intrigues with poetic subtlety. His writing desk is lit by flickering candlelight as he contemplates the perilous truths behind the royal facade. Poetry and oral tradition become instruments of power and survival. With knowledge, a double-edged sword in a world ruled by suspicion, the queen's spiritual role unfolds. In rituals, there's sacred fires, juxtaposed with harsh political decrees and executions. This duality embodies her complex identity: divine intercessor and ruthless ruler. Sigrid navigates the tension between faith and pragmatism, wielding both blessings and brutality to maintain her reign. Loss shadows the queen, her sons taken by plague, family ties fractured. Motherhood is both a source of strength and political burden. Her grief hardens resolve, shaping her actions as a leader. In this violent world, the personal and political intertwine, each loss deepening the queen's fierce determination. Throughout the night, guards patrol dimly lit ramparts. The queen's vigilance never falters. Paranoia lingers like a shadow. Sleep is rare, stolen between watchful hours. Eternal watchfulness is not only survival, but a symbol of the precariousness of power. As dawn breaks, the fjord lies shrouded in mist beneath distant thunder. Sigrid stands alone on her balcony, gazing out over the landscape. Her gilded cage the crown is, both her glory and her prison. The weight of rule is a constant companion, a blend of awe and tragedy, marking the solitary path of Viking queenship. A lone figure kneels before a shrine carved with ancient runes, twilight casting long shadows across weathered stone. The queen's bowed head and clasped hands are a solemn display of devotion, a ritual both private and public. The glowing runes and flickering candles illuminate her face, hinting at the sacred bond between ruler and gods. Yet beneath this act of piety lies an unmistakable loneliness, a profound isolation masked by the solemnity of worship. In this quiet moment, the queen's connection to divine power also underscores the solitude that comes with her sacred role. Viking queens embodied the living bridge between gods and people, their authority rooted in ritual as much as rule. Ceremonies of blessing, oath-taking, and sacred relics marked them as untouchable figures of divine favor. Their presence at these events commanded awe, reinforcing their elevated status. Yet this very visibility created barriers, setting queens apart from those they governed. Revered but distant, their lives became a paradox, constant public display that only deepened their sense of alienation. The psychological cost of being both sacred and solitary weighed heavily, shaping their reign and resilience. The queen's role was paradoxical, public, yet profoundly isolated. Guarded chambers and limited companionship restricted her freedom, confining her to a gilded cage. Social interactions were carefully monitored, breeding mistrust even among close attendants. This constant surveillance and enforced solitude fostered paranoia, a necessary defense in a world rife with betrayal. Saga fragments reveal queens pacing empty halls, their solitude a stark contrast to their commanding presence. This isolation was both a symbol of power and a prison of loneliness, shaping the queen's mental and emotional landscape. Queens navigated a narrow path, expected to wield shrewd political influence while embodying maternal compassion. They balanced fierce counsel with gentle mercy, a dual expectation fraught with risk. Harshness invited scorn and whispers of witchcraft, while perceived weakness threatened loss of respect and authority. The queen's role demanded emotional complexity, constantly adjusting between ruler and mother, strategist and nurturer. This delicate balancing act shaped their decisions and public perception, often at great personal cost. Within the royal court, loyalty was fragile and betrayal pervasive. Every confidant might be a spy, every conversation a test of allegiance. Surveillance was woven into daily life, with letters intercepted and whispered secrets exchanged in shadows. The queen had to discern friend from foe, deploying her own networks of informants to safeguard her reign. Managing such a web of deceit required constant vigilance and psychological acumen, as trust was a scarce commodity in a realm ruled by intrigue and power struggles. Spiritual burdens, prophecy, and sorcery. Queens bore spiritual responsibilities that extended beyond the political. They interpreted prophetic dreams, performed protective magic, and faced accusations of sorcery burdens that added mental strain. Saga tales recount visions foretelling doom or triumph, blending supernatural belief with governance. The threat of curses and magical retaliation heightened the pressures they faced, intertwining faith and fear. These spiritual duties compounded political stresses, demanding resilience in both body and mind amid an ever-present aura of the uncanny. Publicly commanding and imposing, queens carried private fears and doubts hidden behind their regal facade. The pressure to embody perfection as ruler, wife, and mother was relentless. Such expectations often led to anxiety and isolation, as personal vulnerabilities had to be concealed to maintain authority. Historical records and saga narratives hint at the psychological toll exacted by these demands. As queens developed coping mechanisms to navigate the tension between their public duties and private struggles, paranoia became a vital survival tool. Born from the constant threat of betrayal and violence, the queen remained perpetually vigilant, trained to detect even the slightest hint of disloyalty. This cognitive hyper-awareness exacted a heavy toll, yet was essential to maintaining control. Trusted advisors and guards formed a buffer against unseen dangers, providing both security and sanity. Modern studies on trauma and leadership echo these patterns, revealing parallels between medieval queens and contemporary figures under pressure. Solitude was both punishment and refuge. Isolated from many, the queen used solitude to reflect, pray, and plot. This time alone fostered intellectual and spiritual resilience, allowing her to strategize away from prying eyes. Historians highlight solitude's role in shaping female leadership, revealing how it enabled queens to consolidate power and maintain control. In the quiet, the queen's mind sharpened, balancing contemplation with the relentless demands of governance. The strain of ruling left visible marks of exhaustion, illness, and premature aging. Archaeological evidence shows some queens bore injuries or signs of malnutrition, reflecting the intertwined nature of bodily suffering and political struggle. The physical toll of enduring threats, loss, and constant vigilance was profound. Their endurance was not only symbolic but literal, as the body carried the scars of leadership in a brutal and unforgiving world. To maintain order and safety, queens concealed vulnerabilities behind a carefully crafted facade. Elaborate clothing, intricate jewelry, and formal rituals served as psychological armor, projecting strength and control. This performance of majesty reinforced social hierarchies and protected the queen's authority. Historical anecdotes reveal how queens used appearance and ceremony to mask personal doubt, transforming public image into a tool of power. Power conferred status but deepened isolation. The queen's loneliness was inseparable from her reign. This emotional paradox shaped every choice and relationship, a gilded cage binding her as surely as any chains. Her solitude was at once shield and shackle, underscoring the human cost behind the legend. As twilight descends and the empty throne waits, we are invited to consider the quiet burdens borne by those who ruled with both grace and steel. A dim stone corridor flickers under the unstable light of a single torch. Shadows dance and stretch over walls etched with ancient runic inscriptions, their meaning whispered through time. This hidden passageway is more than a physical space, it is a metaphor for the concealed and murky world beneath the Viking court's public ceremonies. Behind the grandeur of feasts and rituals, secret deals and silent threats wove a web of power few ever glimpsed. Here, every shadow could conceal a spy, every rune a warning or a curse. The game of power was played as much in whispers and shadows as on the battlefield. Royal daughters were sent far from home, sailing across stormy seas to foreign courts as living pledges of fragile peace. Raised as princesses, yet kept as prisoners, their lives were double-edged symbols of alliance and tools of control. These women navigated cultures and courts that were often hostile or indifferent. With the emotional cost of separation from family and homeland, some never returned, their fate sealed by political necessity. Sagas tell of princesses who wielded subtle influence or suffered in silence, their stories reflecting the heavy burdens carried behind gilded veils. Hostages embodied the fragile bonds between warring clans. Their presence was living collateral proof of treaties upheld or broken. To send a daughter or noble hostage was to stake trust on a knife's edge, deterring rebellion through the ever-present threat to loved ones. Runic inscriptions record exchanges that were as much psychological warfare as diplomacy, instilling fear and obedience. Hostages lived under watchful eyes, their captivity a constant reminder of the power struggles that defined Viking politics. Ser, a form of Norse magic often associated with women, and especially queens, was a potent and dangerous tool. Secret rituals took place in shadowed tents or secluded groves, where queens and seers performed binding spells to influence the wills of chieftains or foresee coming dangers. These acts were cloaked in secrecy due to social stigma, as male society often feared or condemned seer. For the queen, sorcery was both political weapon and spiritual safeguard, an unseen force, shaping alliances and striking terror in rivals. Magic served as psychological control, binding subjects and allies through fear of supernatural retribution. Tales of chieftains undone by invisible forces circulated widely, blurring line between reality and myth. Queens wielded spiritual authority alongside political power, their rituals reinforcing obedience and suppressing dissent. This fusion of faith and fear made the queen both revered and feared, her influence extending beyond the tangible into realms of the unseen. Hidden toxins lurked in mead cakes and wine, administered discreetly during feasts. The queen's apothecary guarded knowledge of poisons and antidotes, an art both feared and respected. Historical accounts and forensic evidence point to suspected poisonings as tools of court intrigue, silencing rivals without open conflict. The threat of unseen death cast a pall over courtly interactions, complicating trust and alliance. The presence of poison was a constant reminder that survival demanded vigilance beyond the sword. Knowledge of antidotes was tightly held, passed only among trusted confidants. This secret power control over life and death strengthened the queen's position immeasurably. Herbal lore, developed over generations of female healers, provided remedies that could neutralize the deadliest toxins. The symbolic and practical power of this knowledge underscored the queen's role as both nurturer and enforcer, blending healing with control. Court poets wielded words with as much force as any weapon, crafting runic verses that could elevate or destroy reputations. Praise poems immortalized the queen's victories and virtues, while biting satire threatened exile and disgrace. The queen's patronage of skalds was a strategic exercise in controlling her public image and narrative. Poetry and song became extensions of political power, shaping collective memory and enforcing social order. Rune-carved poems immortalized deeds and censured enemies, bridging oral tradition with permanent record. These inscriptions reinforced societal norms and legitimized rulership, ensuring the queen's narrative endured beyond her lifetime. The queen's investment in these rune songs reflected an understanding of history as a political tool, where legacy was constructed as carefully as alliances. A covert network of informants, including traders, slaves, and clergy, formed the Queen's eyes and ears. Information flowed discreetly through Viking society's intricate social tapestry, enabling the Queen to anticipate threats and suppress dissent. This intelligence apparatus was vital to her survival, revealing betrayals before they could materialize and turning rumor into weapon. The Queen mastered the art of rumor, seeding stories to undermine rivals or solidify support. Gossip was a social currency, capable of destabilizing courts or forging alliances. Through subtle manipulation of information, the Queen maintained an advantage in the constant battle for influence, wielding words and whispers with calculated precision. In Viking courts, power extended far beyond the sword. It was woven into stories, secrets, and silent strategies. The Queen embodied intelligence, resilience, and danger, mastering both visible and invisible forces to secure her reign. Her survival depended on controlling narrative as much as territory. This enduring lesson reminds us that political power is as much about managing perception and secrecy as it is about open might. The sleek glass walls of a modern CEO's office reflect empty boardrooms and polished floors, stark under the early dawn light. Despite the outward display of success and control, the scene conveys isolation, the loneliness hidden behind high status and immense responsibility. Across centuries, the Viking Queen's Great Hall was no different, a space where perception ruled. Secrets were guarded, and solitude was an unspoken companion. Power in any era demands vigilance, and often leaves those who hold it profoundly alone. In today's corporate world, mergers and acquisitions function as political marriages did in Viking times. Contracts and non-compete clauses serve as pledges of loyalty, while golden handcuffs and retention bonuses act like hostages binding individuals to alliances forged not by blood, but by business necessity. Trust is fragile, sustained by the constant threat of betrayal. The boardroom-s handshake is as charged with meaning and risk as the exchange of princesses on longships centuries ago. Security details shadow the movements of CEOs, restricting access and severing genuine connections. Stories abound of executives who, despite their entourages of advisors, find themselves profoundly alone. The psychological toll is severe. Relentless pressure, lack of privacy, and the weight of responsibility bear down, echoing the guarded existence of Viking queens confined by both palace walls and suspicion. The higher the throne, the lonelier the seat. Today's public relations firms and media strategists operate like Viking scolds, crafting narratives that can elevate reputations or destroy them. Reputation management is a high-stakes contest of honor and shame, where every message is a verse in the ongoing saga of power. Crisis communication functions much like managing court rumors or quelling whispers of dissent, shaping public perception with precision and intent. Studies reveal that 80% of top leaders report anxiety, while 70% suffer from disrupted sleep. These modern afflictions mirror the chronic stress endured by Viking queens, whose political intrigues and constant threats eroded peace of mind. Coping mechanisms now include therapy, meditation, and coaching, illustrating how the mental burdens of leadership persist regardless of the era or tools at hand. Corporate alliances are fraught with backstabbing and competition, where loyalty is fragile and rumors or leaks can destabilize entire empires. The emotional cost is high, requiring constant vigilance and a readiness to confront betrayal within the ranks. The corporate court is as dangerous and unstable as any Viking gathering, where whispers could mean death or downfall. Modern leaders operate under intense scrutiny, with communications and performance monitored relentlessly. This technological watchfulness resembles the informants and spies in Viking courts. Tools for security that can also breed paranoia. The double-edged nature of surveillance influences decision-making and mental health, underscoring the isolating pressures inherent to leadership. Professor Navin Patel likens modern branding to a rune song, a carefully crafted narrative that sustains power across time. Leaders use symbols, slogans, and public gestures to build their legacy. But the brand's fragility is exposed daily by social media and viral scandals. Reputation management today is the ongoing creation and defense of an identity, much like the Skalds verses that immortalized Viking rulers. Chronic health issues such as hypertension, depression, and burnout plague many leaders. Emotional isolation echoes the loneliness and paranoia recorded in Viking queens' histories. Some leaders step down under the weight of these tolls, reminding us that power, while desirable, exacts a heavy and often hidden cost on body and mind. To survive, leaders build psychological defenses, compartmentalizing emotions, controlling vulnerability, and practicing selective trust. This mirrors the guarded personas and secret rituals of Viking queens, who balanced authenticity with necessary performance. Leadership demands managing the self as much as the realm, a delicate act of concealment and revelation. CEOs today seek to create lasting institutions through philanthropy, memoirs, and foundations, echoing Viking efforts to immortalize deeds in saga and stone. Legacy drives decisions beyond immediate gain, reflecting the tension between personal ambition and the collective memory that outlives an individual's reign. The desire to be remembered shapes the arc of power across centuries. The silhouette of Queen Sigrid fades and morphs into the backlit profile of a modern CEO, linking past and present. Both sovereigns bear similar burdens: loneliness, suspicion, and the relentless weight of command. Their worlds are centuries apart, yet their solitude is the same. Power exacts a timeless toll, and resilience remains the essential quality of those who bear its crown. Return to the throne room at dawn. The torches have long been extinguished, leaving the chamber bathed in pale, quiet light. Banners hang motionless. Dust particles drift lazily in the still air, and the weight of history presses gently upon the walls. She ruled with iron will and icy grace, her authority carved through endless nights of vigilance, where betrayal lurked like a shadow and every poisoned cup was a test of survival. Her crown granted power, yes, but demanded ceaseless watchfulness, a heavy burden few could truly comprehend. Now, older, marked by time and loss, Queen Sigrid stands alone before the empty throne. With deliberate care, she removes her circleter, heavy band adorned with gold and jewels, its intricate carvings telling stories of sacrifice and sovereignty. She places it gently in the royal reliquary, a silent act of weary defiance and release. The circlet gleams faintly, a symbol of the price paid for power. The scene shifts to a modern leader, closing a laptop with a tired sigh. They remove a ceremonial pin from their lapel, stepping away from the harsh glow of the screen into the warmth of sunlight spilling through glass walls. For a brief moment, they are free from the relentless gaze of expectation, shedding the invisible chains that bind those who hold power today. Power's throne is never warm, it is always heavy. The Viking Queen's story reminds us that to lead is to stand alone, shouldering burdens unseen and sacrifices seldom understood. What burdens will you lay down when the world expects you to carry them? What strength might you find in releasing the weight of false crowns? A single jewel, dislodged, rolls slowly across the cold stone floor before coming to rest. In the distance, the call of a raven rises, weaving past and present together in a timeless song of solitude and sovereignty.